can't hear anything. I can't hear anything at all. I can't hear a thing. Sorry, I can't hear anything. Oh,
hello.
Did you?
Hello.
You're the only person.
Oh, Antony and Tam, can you talk? Let me see if I can hear you.
I can hear you now. I can't hear Tam and Antony.
I can't hear Tam and Antony, but I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear each other.
What's going on?
Huh?
I said, Antony and Tam, what's going on? I wonder if they can hear us.
Shall I just...
I see we're live.
Hmm?
I said, I see we're live.
Yeah.
Are we just launching discussion ourselves?
Well, I don't know. I'd like to be able to hear them.
I would like to be able to hear them.
Huh? Let me just, I've got some headphones. It's supposed to be better with headphones, isn't it? But I mean, I can't hear anything at all. But I'm going to put my headphones on and just see whether... Should I put my video on? I mean, I look terrible, but do you think it matters?
I can see you and you look beautiful.
Oh! There's me thinking I'm invisible.
Your nose.
Oh, that's funny. Hold on. Oh no, I just put my headphones into a. I don't know what that was. Oh, sorry. Sorry about this. Okay. Oh, let's try. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I can still hear you. I can hear you on headphones, but I still can't hear Tam and Antony.
I know, and they're just... they've got no camera on either at the moment.
Oh, they do. I can see them.
Can you?
Oh, yes.
What do they look like they're doing? Are they talking? Do they look stressed?
Could I just say, before I say anything, Elizabeth, I've got something that keeps appearing on my thing saying a USB device has exceeded the power limits of its hub port. For assistance, click this message. Okay, I'll click this message. A USB has malfunctioned.
Oh.
Do you know what that's all about?
No idea.
I know, it's my printer. Let me take out my printer. I don't know. Let's try, because that's the only... Hold on. Oh, close. Go away. Go. Okay. I mean, we can just talk about it, but I'm just thinking, you know, I know, for example, that if you do, like, if you've got to talk about something, once you've spoken about it once, it's difficult to speak about it again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you realise we're live on air.
Oh, look. Oh, yeah. Hey, do you know what? I'm going to take off. They've got... I can... Hello? No. Yes! I heard them.
Yes, no, yes, no.
I heard them! Elizabeth!
I heard a really robotic sound. Sorry, that's a train I've got. I'm going to move.
How about now? How about now?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I've got you.
But you're a bit on and off, like, now you're not. 1 minute you're there, the next minute you're not. Like, just then you disappeared. Sorry. Yeah, you're not. I'm just talking to... Oh, there was something for a second. No,
yeah,
I can see.
But it's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
How about now?
Yes, that was it.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay.
Got it. Wow.
Okay.
Excellent. Finally.
Finally.
Apologies to all concerned. Yeah, no, guys, we are men. We need retards.
If you want to invest in some new, if you want us to invest in some new equipment, you can donate through PayPal. frequency528@hotmail.co.uk. Thank you for supporting the Scottish Liberty Podcast. Right.
Watch, don't dunk the table. We might lose sound again.
We're going to
I'm wearing a hat to try and make me look less like an upskirteer.
And less like me.
Yeah, that's what I normally assume when people wear hats.
Okay.
So we're going to give the public, the liberty-loving public, the upshot on the Upskirt Uproar. How did you like that alliteration?
Very good.
Okay,
It's pretty
good.
illiterate.
How long did you practice that for, Antony?
I've been saving it up all week. I've been saving it up. I come up with 1 3-part alliteration a week, and I try and save them up for the show. So please, ladies, introduce yourselves.
Indeed.
You go first, Elizabeth, because you wrote me into this.
I did. So I am Elizabeth Hobson, and I am the Director of Communications at the Justice for Men and Boys and the Women Who Love Them political party. And I've roped in Belinda, who is going to be talking at an event we're putting on called the International Conference on Men's Issues next month. Belinda?
Ooh.
Okay.
Yep, I'm Belinda Brown, and I don't really know what to say about myself. I'm someone who wants to destroy feminism, really. Feminism is something which I just...
Why would you want to do
But
that?
how could you do
have you
that?
got internalized misogyny? Is that it?
Don't you know that you wouldn't even have the vote?
No, it's not as simple as that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to talk about that, that's a whole. But I'm
that's
very.
a whole other thing.
You've really picked the wrong woman to bring that up with.
Yeah. You've picked the wrong woman. I think that feminism causes a huge number of social problems, and that's something for another day, because I'll really talk for a long time.
We'll be going all night on that topic alone.
So we should stick with upskirting. That's
right. Okay.
I've also got a very ill husband, so I may have to go just in the next room. So I may have to go at any moment.
Okay.
So
no problem. So let's get on with it.
Let's go on with it.
Can we all agree that it's probably a douchebag thing to do?
Yes, I think we can all agree with that.
So first thing, should it be a criminal offence carrying a sentence of up to 2 years?
It shouldn't be a criminal offence. I think it's a ridiculous idea. I think ridiculous is too light a word. I think it's I think it's a what would the word be? I think it could just like a line in the sand that we shouldn't cross. I think if we make that criminal, then we're going to start making things criminal, all kinds of things criminal. And I think that one of the points is, if we're talking about, I think that what I'm assuming is that if somebody actually got a camera and shoved it between your legs, that's going to come under abuse anyway. That's going to be some form of physical abuse. So I think that is covered. But what I think could happen is that somebody who is dressing in is wearing a very short skirt, and they bend over, and somebody's feeling a bit pissed, and they take a photo, and that person could land themselves with a sentence. Or you could have something that happened to me, for example, when I was about 9 years old. I was in a school playground, and there were the 2 little boys, and I didn't quite comprehend what had happened, but they put a mirror between my legs, and then they said something about the colour of my knickers, and off they went giggling away. And I didn't like it. I was really annoyed. But that is the sum of it. I was really pissed off. I kind of thought, I think we'd been doing some exercise where you had to stand by the school fence, and you did a tally of the colour of the cars that went past, and I think they were doing a tally of the colour of people's knickers. But I mean, it was just a stupid thing, to think because nowadays you'd have a phone rather than a mirror. And the mirror thing's quite, I was talking to a friend, and she went to a convent, not a convent, but a religious school, with nuns, and the little boys used to put mirrors on their shoes, and when the girls were praying, and I don't know, they used to do the same sort of thing, and the girls just would.
My ex-wife went to a convent school, and she was always told, this is serious, she was always told not to polish her shoes to a high shine because boys could see your pants in them. So they're told not to polish their shoes because it would reflect your knickers in them.
That's quite funny.
Yeah, I suppose it is.
Okay, so hang on a minute, Belinda, though. But could it not be argued? In fact, I'm going to argue it. That there's a big difference between kids, who are still exploring their interest in girls in a very childish way, playing a little prank like that, and a grown man taking putting his phone down and taking a selfie up a girl's, sorry, not, well, yeah, it's a selfie at that point, up a girl's skirt or anything like that at a grown man's age, he should know better, Belinda. And
yeah, but
okay,
Anthony, if I can just jump in, that's
Sure.
exactly why Christopher Chope objected to the bill. Because if you look, the NSPCC in 2016 said that 1 in 6 people who were reported to the police for sending or receiving child sexual images were under 18.
Yeah.
And if they are convicted or get a caution, they end up on the sex offenders register and work with children for the rest of their lives.
And
So
this can be consensual. This could be consensual between two 17-year-olds or two 16-year-olds who are perfectly legal to have sex with each other, perfectly legal to get married even, and yet if they send each other pictures of their private parts, they can be both criminalised. Would that be right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, so, okay, what you're saying is this is part of a wider environment of laws. But I think there's something quite. I'm not really sure if I'm following the train. Like I want to place. Personally, right. My position is actually I think that it should possibly be a criminal offence. I'm not saying that it should carry a sentence of up to 2 years. Sorry.
I'm quite confused about at what point it's not.
Right.
Because at the moment it can be covered.
Because I would think it was a sexual assault.
Well, it could be covered by outraging public decency.
Okay.
Right.
Problem with that.
Lewd and libidinous behaviour.
One needs to see it happen.
Right.
Yeah.
It can be covered by harassment, which is behaviour which causes alarm or distress.
Okay. Breach of the peace.
Or it can be covered by voyeurism, but that's only for in a private place, like a changing room or your home, where you would expect to not.
Yeah.
Yeah, have someone breaching your privacy.
But I mean, as far as, this Gina Martin, who's like the campaigner who had this incident happen at the British Summertime Festival.
Yeah.
I mean, she saw the picture of herself on this guy's phone. Phone off him, gave it to security. They called the police. The police made him delete the image. I don't see why she's bothered after that, to be honest. As long as the image is gone. But
well, I mean,
I don't really see why that doesn't come under harassment, because the problem was the police said they couldn't pursue a charge.
Sure.
Okay, and how intimate was
the?
Okay, how intimate was the picture? Do we know? I mean, was it her neck? Was it her knickers? Was it her private parts? What was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, I can't imagine that if someone took a picture of a man's private parts that they'd necessarily have recourse under the law. However,
Scotland.
Right, go on.
Did she?
That's a good point, actually.
Did she not have knickers on? Can I just ask?
She did.
So it's a photo of her knickers.
Good point.
Yeah.
Right, that's a good point.
It's like
it's not something. It's not anything that you wouldn't see at the beach.
It's just like,
I know, but the thing is, it's just kind of like it's not really about it. I'm just saying what other people would say. It's not the same as seeing it in the beach, because when someone goes to the beach, they're obviously there in their bikini or what have you, voluntarily. Whereas people feel violated by having a picture taken of them, which they deem inappropriate.
Yeah, I think it's naughty and it's violating, but I mean, I kind of agree with Joanna Williams that really we should be teaching people to deal with these situations themselves, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, if what happened at that festival where the police turned up and made him delete the image, I think is perfect, to be honest. What's being suggested, I think, is going to waste police time. It's going to waste court time, which is going to deny victims of serious offences justice. If people are going to prison for 2 years, that's a shitload of
it's a lot of resources.
The taxpayer is going to have to shell out.
Belinda?
Sorry, Belinda. Yeah, did you want to come in on that?
I completely agree with Elizabeth. I think I agree with everything Elizabeth says. I think it's about. I do feel a bit like we need to toughen up a bit because, you know, this feeling violated. Well, you know, feeling violated isn't an objective thing. You can encourage people to feel violated. I've had that happen to me. I remember recounting, this again when I was young, I remember recounting a particular incident to a friend of mine who was a feminist, and it was something I'd got over. And she cast the incident in a whole different light, and then it made me feel very violated. But then I realised it was the way that it had been presented to me by her made me change my feeling. So feeling isn't something objective. It's something that you can actually create and provoke. You teach people to feel violated, just as you teach people how to feel offended. You know, I think that I mean, of course, there are. I mean, it's a tricky thing because there are things which are kind of, for me, would be quite objective. If your stuff is stolen, that is a violation. You know, and I feel like there are some things which are violations, and some things which I suppose, yes, it is a violation, but it's kind of a minor violation, and we have to be careful of doing things because it's what it makes people feel, because then it just boils down to how does a person feel about it. And I think if somebody feels violated by something that really is fairly minor, they just need to pull their socks up and just say, no, you just have to learn to deal with it, because otherwise, where do you draw the line, really? And so I think that's how I would see it. I mean,
can I throw something out here? I mean, do you think it's not beyond the stretch of the imagination that we could go from that to the aggressive male gaze? I was walking up the stairs on the bus, and when I looked behind me, this guy was looking up my skirt, you know. Yeah. And therefore, he should be arrested and charged for not averting his eyes from my, you know, extremely skimpy skirt, so to speak. I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you think that's a possibility?
That's another thing that's happened in Bonnie, Scotland, isn't it? There was a homeless guy who went and was looking at a shop assistant through a window. And then he went away, came back and was looking at her again. She called the police and he ended up then.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
I did, yeah. I saw in the Times, there was just, I can't remember who it was, but it was some politician, and she was saying, yes, we must clamp down on any acts of misogyny. You know, I mean, that's just.
You're getting to the point of thought crime.
Any acts of misogyny, and misogyny is something that's completely defined by. There's nothing objective about what they call misogyny. I mean, I've got pretty clear ideas of what I consider misandry, but I mean, other people, you know, and I think they're probably a lot more substantial than what people consider misogyny, to be honest. You know, so there's not. You know, we have to be careful.
I mean, just criticising feminists could be misogyny.
We have a video on our YouTube channel called Toxic Femininity, and it was alleged that to even have a video called that might have been misogynistic, but they've got no problem at all throwing around the term toxic masculinity. So what's good for the gander certainly is not good for the goose always. We have one commenter, James Owen, who says, so looking at women's breasts will be next. And also, he has a solution. Wear a full burqa.
Ooh, controversial.
Exactly.
But that's the direction which things are going in. I mean, there is some kind of uneasy alliance between extreme Islam and feminism. You know, it feels like. I mean, I kind of feel that maybe we need to be talking a whole lot more about issues. I mean, this is something which is never ever discussed, and the belief is I can wear, as a woman, I can wear absolutely whatever the hell I like, and you as a male have no right to even blink twice, you know, and you just put up with it. And this is kind of enshrined in, this is the assumption of everybody. And I mean, if I question it, I know that I'll be seen as being in the wrong, but I do question it because I think that actually maybe we should think about how we're making blokes feel. I mean, I'm not a bloke, and now I'm kind of fair, you know, I'm older, and like I say, it's easier for me to look at these things objectively. But as I understand it, you know, young males can be quite distracted by, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not male and I'm not gay.
I'm male, I'm not young, but I can be quite distracted.
But you know, they can be quite, you know, say, you know, girls with very short skirts, say it's happening in school and the girl's got a very short skirt, or, you know, as I understand it, males can be quite distracted, and perhaps it's just a kindness to think, well, you know, let's not distract them. Let's just leave them in peace. I don't know. That's just something that's probably incredibly controversial.
If you're going to be offended by the distraction, then yeah, leave them in peace. You know, if you're quite happy with a bit of attention, then fine, do it.
Exactly. But the
so
fact
what you're
is that,
saying is freedom of choice is not freedom from consequences.
Indeed,
but that's even more unacceptable than what I've just said, because if somebody does look at you and you're dressed like that, you know, it's immediately, what are you looking at me like that for? You know, and, you can be attacked.
And you do have,
you know, if you look at someone's cleavage, you know, you can be attacked as a bloke. And I mean, I think a male's eyes might be quite drawn to a cleavage. And to be honest, I don't exactly understand why a woman is flaunting everything. Why is she doing that?
Well, because she's
trying to get some kind of interest or reaction or provocation or something. I don't know.
Maybe she thinks it's selective. You know, she wants to attract X, Y type of bloke, but not Z. So you know, that doesn't work like that. But
it's okay to look at your alpha male, but if you're a poor beta like one of us, you've just got no chance.
I mean, if I went around, for example, God forbid, right? But if I went around with my parts hanging out, you know, and like, you know, some woman kind of like went, "What the heck?" And I'm going, "Excuse me, I think you'll find them up here." You know, people would automatically go, "Well, that's ridiculous." You know, don't go around with your meat and 2 veg hanging out. You know, that's the old double standard, but you know.
Yeah, well, I think you know, I think it is something that we should actually talk about, but we're not allowed to talk about, you know, and I think that's what actually, I think there needs to be a dialogue between men and women about these kinds of issues, because at the moment there can't be a dialogue because the law has been set by females, which is I can flaunt exactly what I like and you are not allowed to react. So you couldn't have a dialogue.
And not only that, but you're not allowed an opinion. As a man, you're not allowed an opinion on it.
But also, I think, you know, to use a more equivalent example, when you go out driving in your Lamborghini and a fat chick looks at it, you go, "Oi! What are you looking at my Lamborghini for? Why are you looking at my bank balance?" Only hot girls are allowed to look. Only hot girls are allowed to.
Imagine if you said that.
I know.
Well, I just said it on the podcast. Right. So
where were we with this?
Right. I don't know. Like, I'm gonna.
We're feeling
see a little. No. I would like to every side of the discussion to be given a fair hearing.
Well, I think that was the point that so is it Christopher Chope, the MP, who in my opinion quite bravely you know, said no, object. He doesn't object. He actually doesn't object to it becoming a criminal offence, but he just said, guys, can we have some debate about this first? And he's being lambasted. I mean, the accusation is basically that he's some sort of pervert who likes, you know, who probably is an upskirter himself, because he just said, I think we should have some debate on this.
Right.
And it's been quite vicious. And obviously at the forefront of this is Jess Phillips, MP, who's furious about the idea that there should be some sort of debate. Curiously, she thinks there should be a never-ending debate about Brexit, but she thinks there should be no debate whatsoever about this. What's behind that?
What about saying no debate?
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is the feminist position about everything. It's a dogma which you can't challenge. So I'm not surprised by that. I mean, even if we were to have a debate, we would not be allowed to have a real debate because, for example, we'd not be allowed to raise questions about, you know, perhaps we should think, us girlies should think twice about wearing really short skirts and sticking up our fannies in people's faces that, you know, when they don't really know us, or, you know, and that would be an illegal view to have. So, I mean, Jess Phillips saying, it's funny, I was kind of in a debate with Jess Phillips the other day. She's kind of quite a likable person, but she's got this obsession. She's just got this very, very feminist mindset, and it's like a religion, but they don't understand that it's like a religion.
Is it more like a cult than a religion? No. It's way too widespread to be like a cult. No, it's more like a religion. No, I wish it was like a cult. No, it's more like a religion. By a cult, I don't just mean that it's small. I mean, like, by a cult, I just mean it's very intolerant of dissent within its own ranks.
I think the feminist movement has got its own dogmas, and primarily, obviously, the dogma of patriarchy, that society is created by men to benefit men at the expense of women. For my own, like, I guess I'm kind of sensitive to these issues because, right, okay, have
you ever been upskirted?
Well, I did wear a kilt once to a burn supper, so I guess you know, I was interested in the men's issues and the riposte to feminism. So many people who listen to the show know I'm a therapist, right? And I was interested in the men's issues, and I saw all the stuff about rape culture and how this rape culture was obviously a myth, and that our society doesn't report rape. But through my work, I've worked with women who've sometimes been raped or sexually assaulted by men who had multiple accusers, and yet the case gets thrown out of court because no one accuser's allegations can be proven, even if, you know, maybe 4 or 5 women said the same guy. And so that kind of makes me more sensitive than I was before I spoke to people who'd been victims of this kind of thing. So it could be that maybe when I say, first of all, I completely agree that 2 years is way out of proportion with the crime. I think the best, I'm kind of for restorative justice anyway, so I think the best situation would be for someone to have to pay a fine to the victim, even if it was a small, even if it was a small thing, just as a deterrent. The only problem you have with that say if you do this, if you get caught doing this, you have to pay £50 to the woman or something like that. To compensate her. It may encourage false allegations. So that would be my position on the upskirt thing. And I enjoyed hearing your perspectives as well, and why you think that might not necessarily be a good idea. Now, is there anything that you guys would like to say before we go into the... Matthew, are you with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just great. Is there anything either Elizabeth Hobson or Belinda Brown, would you like to sum up or add anything before we go into our next topic?
No, I'm interested in what you said about your experience with therapy, and I do sometimes wonder when you know, sometimes it seems to me like the world has become, or male behavior has become, I feel maybe, huh?
Pathologized,
I think so.
No, well, it's definitely pathologized. Definitely pathologized. But I do sometimes wonder, are blokes behaving a bit more dodgily than they did when I was like 20? You know, are they? I sometimes wonder that to myself. And you know, that's, I mean, it's interesting because I was at a male psychology conference today and it was talking about the impact of growing up without a father in the household and the impact of that on the male psychology and the female psychology, but the male psychology in particular, you know, and it raises the possibility that there, you know, maybe we are dealing with more pathological, possibly we are dealing with more difficult behavior because people have had more difficult upbringings than in the past. I don't know, but that's a whole other subject. But it just provoked what you said, that story you said, you know, which was quite thought provoking. So I'm probably deviating. Sorry.
Well, Belinda, where can people find your writing? And we'd be happy to have you back on the show if you want to discuss other issues with us. You just let us know, because there's obviously a lot of things that you feel really passionate about, and it'd be our pleasure to have you back. But tell the people at home where they can find your writings.
Okay, so my name's Belinda Brown, and I know that you're libertarians. I actually write for something called The Conservative Woman.
Okay.
Don't be put out. It's not about conservatism as the political position, but I do have feelings about traditional family. That is so I do come from a conservative perspective in that.
Yeah, socially conservative.
Yeah, I am socially conservative.
I've definitely become a lot more socially conservative over the years. For my sins. So thank you so much for coming on the show, and we hope to have you back another time. Thank you, Belinda.
Okay, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Me too.
Thanks very much.
Elizabeth, anything more?
I suppose the only thing that occurs to me when you're talking about that in relation to this issue is that at least the women that you're talking about had their day in court. If we're going to start, you know, taking upskirters to court, then we might not even get there.
Right. I think the worst thing about the innocence that I was talking about is sometimes these, as teenagers, were paraded in front of court called sluts, whores, liars. They were making it up and things like that, and it's a traumatic thing to go through. And I understand that that's part of the justice the justice system, but you know, more than one. I'm not just talking, you know, teenage girls, like it can really. They might not have even wanted to go to court, but they were goaded into it by attorney, and it's just so sad because there's no solution to it. I mean.
No.
Obviously, we need a court system. We need to examine witnesses to find out if they're lying or not. And you know, there are fake rape allegations as well. Unfortunately, there are. But I think feminists should be talking about false rape allegations because they discredit real victims as well. So thank you very much both for coming on the Scottish Liberty Podcast. I know we'll be speaking to you again. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. So Matthew.
Hi guys.
Hi, Matthew. Matthew goes by Matthew Rothbard on Facebook. I hope you don't mind me advertising you. Is there somewhere where we can find your writings, and do you have anything to plug before we talk about the Trump immigration ignominy? Ignominy.
I don't really have anywhere I write currently other than just my Facebook page. I have two different Twitter accounts. One of them was initially intended to be more explicitly political, and one was more just general. It's my Twitter account I've had forever. It's a lot of sports, but I've been starting to talk about politics and stuff on there more. So the one we would probably get more of me would be I tweet stuff here.
Okay.
And then
tweet stuff here.
Yeah, and you can also follow me at Matt Splainer if you want. That's my other one. And then I have a podcast as well that I'm trying to get.
That's what we want you to plug.
Yeah, we're trying to get back up and running on it, but it's just been difficult with my co-host. I just got married recently, and he's buying a house and all this stuff. So, but But that podcast is called The Title Pending Show. If you look for it,
the title Pending Show, and we've got Mance Rayder of Freeman Behind the Wall. Could you please mute your mic when you're not speaking, each of you, because that will help us not have background sounds.
If you can.
If you can. So
Sure.
Thank you. So just a little bit about Matthew. You're a passionate Facebook poster. You put very detailed status updates on political issues, and I think perhaps it would be a good idea for you to copy and paste them into a blog. Blogger or WordPress is free for posterity. Now, many of you at home might have heard of Mance Rayder. He's got a very popular podcast called Freeman Behind the Wall. He's had some excellent guests on there, including some guy called Antony Sammeroff, who co-hosts another
shameless self-publicist, Antony Sammeroff.
Oh my goodness!
I don't know. He might have had some other good people on there from time to time, but that guy's the main one. And please just say hello, Mance, and introduce yourself for anyone who doesn't know you.
Hey, how are you doing today? I'm Mance Rayder. I host the Freeman Beyond the Wall podcast. I've written a couple books. They're available on Amazon. They're available on my website, freemanbeyondthewall.com. I'm just happy to be here.
Thank you. Okay, Matthew, I believe that you might be short of time, so please give us your rundown on this Trump immigration scandal. We want to pick your brain for everything you know. I know you put quite a detailed Facebook post up about it, so it'd be great to hear your perspective.
Okay, so at the outset, I'll make clear that my personal philosophy is probably most closely associated with anarcho-capitalism. So
okay.
There's two different parts of it. There's the how things should be, and then there's the how things are. And when I started researching it, I thought that I thought there was a much easier solution to this than there actually is.
Okay.
Because ultimately it gets into what are borders, and does a nation state have a right to manage its own borders, and all of that whole issue.
Yeah.
So obviously I would say as an anarchist, I would say that the state has no legitimate authority over borders. But I also know that in the world that we're living in right now, I can't just throw up my hands and say, well, the federal government shouldn't be involved in this at all, so fuck everybody, you know?
Right.
So there has to be, I want to see suffering minimized. And right now there's suffering almost being maximized, and it's not a partisan thing. And a lot of it is born out of dogma and misunderstanding of what the fundamental aspects of the situation are. So the quick rundown would be, there's two types of immigrants. There's legal immigrants and there's illegal immigrants. So a legal immigrant would be somebody who comes through a port of entry, which would be across a border at a actual seaport or an airport or something like that. So they come through there, they say, we would like to be processed as immigrants who would like to enter your country. So that would be the normal legal immigrants. The illegal immigrants would be people who smuggle themselves into the country somehow. So they either cross the border, physically cross the border illegally down on the border with Mexico, or however else they get into the country illegally.
Sure.
Then there's also a subcategory of immigrant or refugee called an asylum seeker. And those are people who aren't just seeking to come to the country just because they want a better life. They're people who, it's a very specific, narrow definition according to international law and according to US federal law, which they have to have a credible perception of threat to their lives or their well-being if they go back to the country they came from. So it's people who are escaping political oppression or something like that. It has to be a systematic thing. It can't just be like, my husband beats me. That wouldn't qualify someone as an asylum seeker. So then there's two different types of asylum seekers as well. There's an affirmative asylum seeker, which is someone who presents themselves at a port of entry or a border crossing or something like that, and they say, I'm here to seek asylum in your country. Then there's also a defensive asylum seeker, which is someone who is already in the country and they're going to be deported. Well, not necessarily. They don't necessarily have to be deported, but that's how it often happens, is somebody is already physically in the country and they say, don't send me out of the country because I'm claiming asylum. And so then they can have their case heard. So according to federal law, both of those are legitimate ways to gain asylum. Now, typically for people who seek asylum, I think it's something like, there's not really clear data on it, but there's something like 1 in 5 people are actually granted asylum. So, so 80% of people who seek asylum have their asylum claims denied. And according to international law, there is no obligation on the behalf of a host country to grant an asylum claim.
But it's probably also even a huge expense to process someone's asylum claim and then deny it.
Yeah, there's a ton of bureaucracy and courts and all the stuff that's associated with it. So, and then recently the United States has been being inundated with asylum claims as the refugee crisis in Central America has been ramping up, which is basically the responsibility of the United States in the first place. But leaving that aside, you can only take on so many different points at one time. So the majority of people who are going to be persuaded about this on some level believe that the federal government has some type of role in managing borders. And while I don't believe fundamentally that it does, I also think that there isn't, from an anarchist perspective, it isn't realistic to say that the federal government should just stop managing the border altogether, because it would be kind of like somebody coming to your house and ordering you to take your door off your hinges and never have a door. So they can't tell you can't have a door, but they also can't tell you that you have to leave your door locked all the time. Like, both of those are illegitimate solutions. So, so there has to be some element of the federal government managing this until the society is at a point where we can entertain the idea that the federal government shouldn't be involved in it.
Yeah, until Ancapistan.
I want to bring Mance in a moment, but before we do that, can you please tell us a little bit about the controversy about Trump supposedly, or the Trump administration separating children from their families? Is it true? Is it just an allegation? And if it is true, what are the nuances of this?
And also, just quickly, is this something that the Trump administration has started, or is this a vestige or a leftover from the previous administration? Sorry, that's a lot to,
Okay, so it is true that the Trump administration is separating families. It is not true that it's something that's new with the Trump administration. It's happened with past administrations as well. And the Obama administration actually was taken to court over it. They were sued, and because they were arguing that there's a thing called the Flores settlement that was settled in 1997, which was some people who were suing the Clinton Department of Justice at the time. And the court ruled that children, that minors that are like aliens, unaccompanied alien minors, cannot be held in detention for longer than 20 days. Then in 2016, under the Obama administration, a court further ruled that statute applies to both unaccompanied minors and minors who are with their parents. So what's new with the Trump administration is that the Trump administration is pursuing a zero tolerance policy toward the enforcement of the federal law. It's 8 U.S.C. 1325, if you want to look it up, which is what criminalizes illegal entry into the country. So in 1951, the law was passed that made it illegal, that made it a misdemeanor to illegally enter the country. So it's a misdemeanor that I think it's like up to 6 months in prison and a fine, and then illegal re-entry is a felony. So the Trump justice, or the Trump administration's new policy is that they are enforcing that with a zero tolerance policy. If you enter the country illegally, 100% of the time you will be prosecuted for the crime of entering the country illegally. Now, the reason that they did that,
which arguably he's been voted to do that. That's one of the main things that people turned out to vote for Trump for. We don't necessarily agree with democracy as a system, but if you're going to have one, you hope that people deliver on their campaign promises. And like it or not, people voted for Trump for tighter immigration controls. Where's the lie, as they like to say on memes?
Exactly. So that's what I've been trying to communicate to people, is that this isn't, he's enforcing existing federal law. If you don't like the existing federal law, then lobby to change it, but then understand what the consequences of that are. So then
well, this is the most.
I apologize if it gets loud here. I have a train that might be going by me in a second.
Okay, no problem.
Okay,
So maybe, yeah, go ahead.
So the reason that the nuance behind that, so it might seem like, oh, well, it's heartless to not make exceptions for people. The first term Obama administration, their policy was essentially, we will deport you if you cross the border illegally, no matter who you are. Zero tolerance, you'll be deported if you cross illegally. You won't be prosecuted, but you'll be deported. And I can't find clarification on this, but I think that also meant that essentially they were denying asylum claims as well. Even if they reasonably could grant the asylum claim, they were denying it if you cross the border illegally. So that also seems unduly harsh to me as well, because I think, again, I think the federal government doesn't have a legitimate moral role in determining which people can walk across which arbitrary lines in the ground. But again, that's something that isn't a popular opinion. And most of the people who oppose these practices, they don't share that opinion. So there's a hypocrisy there, or at least a lack of connecting these dots. So the consequence of it, so then in Obama's second term, he changed and he started making exceptions to the deportation rule and the prosecution rule by saying, if you have a child with you, if you're accompanied by a child, you won't be deported or prosecuted. So,
okay, well, that's going to encourage people to take children whether or not that they're theirs.
Exactly. So over the next 4 years, there was a 500% increase in people bringing children across the border. And there's not always evidence that they even know each other. And then you have parents who are so desperate to get their kids out of the country that they're selling their kids to child traffickers to get them smuggled into the country. Yeah. So it creates a perverse incentive.
Okay, I hear you. And we're most compelled, or at least the libertarian argument that will get put forth by non-open borders libertarians will be, well, look, if you don't separate the families, then you're just incentivizing saying anything goes. The more you allow it, the more you'll have. People respond to incentives. If you just grant people amnesty, then you'll have a limitless number and there will be no America left. There'll be no Western civilization left. There'll be no rule of law. There'll be no libertarianism, because libertarianism is quite particular to America, and even that small fire is being fanned out. So Matthew, if you can stick around, that would be great. If you can't, I will forgive you. Please, if you can, stay. Mance, talk to us. Tell us what you know and what your views are on the situation.
It always comes down to whenever an anarcho-capitalist, a voluntarist, talks about these things, we talk about, the border should be private. What no one ever talks about is you don't need Ancapistan for that. I mean, you could just sell. I mean, who owns public property? A lot of the people in the Hoppe camp or the late Rothbard camp will say they do if they're a taxpayer. Well, that's horseshit. If you can't go and grab something, and if you can't use something, if you can't take possession of something, you don't own it. So I'll fly, and I've offered to do this. I will fly people to where they think there's public property that they own so that they can go claim it. And the only thing is, I want to be there to film it. I want to be there to film them getting killed and getting shot. Okay, so let's end this argument. Okay, public land could be eliminated without Ancapistan. Okay, so I think what we should be encouraging and what we should always to talk to people about is anybody we talk to, that this would all be solved if the government would just allow people to buy that land, and then it would be private and then it would become a trespassing issue. Okay, with what we're dealing with now, I just wanted to get my philosophical, purity, my pure libertarianism out of the way now. The White House has clearly said that they want to make these people miserable. So what they've done is, and Matthew is right, you have people who are coming to work, you have people who are asylum seekers, but what they've been doing is they've been shutting down border checkpoints. So, to come and you say, okay, I want to come in and work, I'm going to apply for this and everything, people have showed up and they're closed. So they go to the asylum checkpoints. And when they go to the asylum checkpoints, this policy that the White House, probably Stephen Miller, is in charge of, if all the, is basically just, we're going to bully, I mean, we're just going to make examples out of these people. And my problem with the whole thing is you can't make examples out of kids. Okay?
Right.
And these people, in many cases, not, you know, in Mexico's horrible. You know, and people will say, well, you know, we didn't create anything. We didn't create any of the problems in Mexico. Well, fucking, no fucking way. Yes, we did. By having a war on drugs, by having certain drugs be illegal, you've created the black market. You've created the cartels that are down there. And I'm not saying that cartels wouldn't be down there, that there wouldn't be some kind of violence, but it wouldn't be as systematic as it is.
Sure. Can I just ask you something? Because there's a lot of people in the UK who probably go, Mexico's horrible. Hang on a minute, for crying out loud. I know loads of people who go on vacation there and they say it's great. You know?
Well, yeah, there are sections, there are parts that have been cleaned up so that tourists can go there. But okay. you do not want to go to border towns like the town right over from El Paso, Texas.
No,
these are towns where people get killed in the streets. So,
yeah, I'm with you, but the question that would probably follow on is then, so why aren't the people from the shitty areas of Mexico going to the good areas of Mexico for asylum?
How big are those areas? Can they say, can those areas, can the really nice areas, and I mean, there are some, like if you go to the Baja Peninsula, and you go south on the peninsula, you know, but there's not there's not an insane amount of commerce if you go to, you know, especially a lot of the towns where Americans have settled. But yes, there are places that and I'm sure there are Mexicans that do that. But when it comes down to it, where if you were going to improve your life, and both sides of my family came to this country in the 20th century, and one of them escaped one side escaped the Russian Revolution in 1917, and the other side just came out of the Caribbean, from Puerto Rico. Okay. So, but they thought that they could find a better life here, that there was more opportunity, and that's something. Isn't that something that the United States is always preaching? Isn't that part of the? Isn't that part of the ideology?
Yes, people say that that was then and this is now, and they've got various reasons to think that or to justify that. I don't want to go deeply.
Trump says the economy is doing great.
Okay.
Hey, come on! We need people in here. There's a guy in California. There's an avocado farmer in California that can't find people to pick avocados, and he's offering $400 a day to do it.
I'll fucking go and work for him.
Shit.
I mean, that sounds good. I love avocados as well. I can get in the job.
Yeah, me too.
What I'm concerned with, or what caught my attention, is now I would say I was open borders libertarian, like many of us were a few years ago. I was dragged kicking and screaming by the hair while I still had it over to the closed borders position by force of argument and evidence. But what I was concerned with during this episode is what I perceive as callous lack of compassion and the style of communication of some of the closed borders libertarians that I saw on this issue. And I just don't think we're going to be winning over hearts and minds with that kind of callous attitude. Now, the people that I am going to quote here are not the people that I thought were displaying of those attitudes, because I didn't actually write down the incompassionate comments. I went and asked on some libertarian groups that, with people that I admire and I respect, what were their libertarian arguments for Trump's policy. And people were saying things like, you know, it's mean to incarcerate children alongside their criminal parents. But you know, in times of high stress. And what I was concerned at, I don't really think that crossing a border is the same level of criminality as a property rights violation or beating someone up. You know, I mean, they will argue, well, you're trespassing or you're looting the taxpayer. Well, they've not looted the taxpayer yet. Others say, in general, anything that deters illegal immigration will decrease the resources stolen from taxpayers. And you know, we've got someone claimed and has a source for it, that of the 12,000 children, I mean, that's a lot. 12,000 children separated. That's shocking. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of psychological wounding. That's why I wish people would handle these issues with care. And they'll, of course, say, well, Antony, why aren't you being compassionate to the taxpayers that have to pay? You know,
could I jump in for a sec?
Yeah, sure. Please do.
Absolutely.
So that number, the 12,000 number, I had to look for substantiation of this, but I found pretty good corroboration that of the 12,000, 10,000 of them were unaccompanied minors who were sent here alone.
Right, that's so
And then the remaining 2,000 were ones who came with their parents across the border.
Right.
And then, because obviously you can't incarcerate a child with his parents, and then that's the justification for separating them, is that they legally can't hold the children for longer than 20 days, and they can't, according to the Fourth Amendment, you can't imprison someone for the crimes of their parents. So it leaves them with, and then the third thing was that there was the Obama policy, which is they would hold them for the 20 days, and then after that they would release them with a summons for a court date, which was the catch and release policy. And they all have pluses and minuses, because with the catch and release policy, there's anywhere from 40 to 80% of people don't ever show up for their court date. And then what happens is that these kids are in the country and there's no one that's documenting them. And then that was turning into child trafficking within the country, that people would offer to sponsor them, but then they would essentially turn them into slaves.
Wow, shocking.
So then you have this situation where when people cross the border illegally with children, you can't detain them together, you can't separate them, and you can't cut them loose. So what do you do with them? So I think that the Trump administration's approach to it has been, we want to severely disincentivize anybody from crossing the border illegally. We want people to come across the border legally. And if you come across the border legally, you won't be separated, you won't be detained, any of that. And then obviously the bureaucracy is just so overwhelmed with all these people and all these resources being directed everywhere. So there's lots of rumors about, people that are being unnecessarily rough, and that there are even people who come legally are being detained and separated and all of that. And I don't really want to try to get into rumors or trying to substantiate what people's personal beliefs are and personal approaches are. But whether that's happening or not, this is still, I don't see a clear solution to the issue that doesn't involve substantial numbers of people, of Americans who care about them, to step up themselves and volunteer their own houses and volunteer to create companies that can facilitate this process. And and people think it's just a Trump issue, or they think it's just it's not a Trump issue, it's a federal government issue.
Yeah, it's a civilizational issue as well. I mean, so just to finish up with some of the comments, I mean, what one would say, the main reason they've been separated is because the so-called parents don't have any documentation to prove who they are, or if they're even the parents of the children. Another says, if you allow people to exploit children in order to manipulate their way to political victory, they'll do so more in the future. So that's what people are concerned about, the incentives. And another argument, so I think that's, let's see what we've got in comments here. Great discussion, fellas. Well, I agree, I think we've been doing well. And so
if we do say so ourselves.
Yeah, so Mance, do you have something more to add on top of what's been said?
Is there any light at the end of the tunnel here? Is there any solution other than, like you said, people stepping up to the mark and volunteering their own homes?
Well, I think one thing the government needs to do is the government needs to admit
abolish itself.
Well,
the government needs to admit that what?
They're complicit in this.
Right.
That they've created, in El Salvador, through the CIA fucking with the government, with the governments down there for so long, they're creating this crisis. They've basically created the environment that a lot of these people are trying to escape from.
Right, so much in the way that we have in Syria, much in the way that our foreign policy has created a huge migrant crisis from the Middle East into Europe.
But I mean, I think it would be a good idea if, say, we were talking about private companies, private homes, care facilities. If the government would give them tax breaks in order to take take these people, plus they wouldn't be collecting so many taxes, is one of the reasons I say that. And we keep, it would starve the beast a little bit more. But if there was some kind of incentive to integrate. I mean, what do you do with children who show up alone? I mean, do you turn them around and send them back alone? Send them back to someplace they've obvious. I mean, it's I mean, this
really does stretch our
clusterfuck of that. Yeah, it's a
clusterfuck
because they've risked life and limb already to get to where they are.
And people will say, I guess, or I've thought it before, not necessarily about this issue, but that the people that are the most quick to jump to compassion seems to be people who aren't actually going to be paying out of pocket because they don't pay taxes, they don't earn a high enough income to, or and things like that. Sorry, I'm obviously stereotyping the hippie lefty, but essentially you say, well, look, you want to be compassionate to every last penny of someone else's money. Unless you're digging in your pocket to help, then you're not really personally responsible, you're just virtue signaling. And there is a temptation to do that, but when children are involved, I mean, they're not agents, and they don't have much autonomy or any, and it really is a clusterfuck. I couldn't put it in differently.
Can I ask one thing? How are they defining a child? Interestingly, at what point do you cease being a child in terms of federal law?
When you turn 18.
Ah, right. Okay. So that'd be another reason why the figures would be so high as well then, because
there might be 16, 17.
I mean, like 17 in my book ain't no child. I joined the army when I was 17.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, even 16 in this country, you can get married at 16. And they're talking about giving 16-year-olds the vote as well.
Well, so, from what I understand, the system is set up. There's actually apparatus in place for children like 15, 16, and 17 years old. That it's a lot easier to bring them in here. The problem is that they're getting what I think they're referring to them as tender age. That's the official, would be anyone 14 and under. And that's a real problem because, I mean, how do you turn a 14, someone who's shown up, a 13 or 14-year-old or an 8-year-old, how do you turn them around? And, really, how do you, even if you put them into a fucked up system like we have here, I mean, you realize there's two different, they come in with the border, they come in and deal with the Border Patrol and ICE, and then they're handed off to another, to another system. And those, historically in this country, the different agencies don't talk, they don't communicate very well. So, I mean, it's so dangerous for an 8-year-old. I mean, we have, I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but we have a serious child trafficking problem in this country. Right. I mean, kids, the amount of kids that go missing every year is the numbers. You wouldn't even believe the numbers. I mean, when I tell people numbers, they look them up and they're like, "Holy shit! How did I not know this?" So I mean, this is so fucked up. For me to just sit here and go, open the borders, let them all in, that's fucking stupid. I mean, it's dangerous. But
and they're responsible.
I mean, but for people to be so callous as to be, oh, my taxes, and this bullshit. Well, stop fucking paying your taxes. If we all stop paying our fucking taxes, what are they going to do if 40 million people stop paying their taxes? Isn't this the greatest evidence in the world to stop paying your fucking taxes? Look at where they're going.
Well, on that radical note, we are coming up to an hour. So I just want to wrap up. If there's any burning comments before we go, please throw them in. Otherwise,
yeah, I got something.
Okay, go for it.
Just the last point would just be that My biggest concern is that the only reason that people care about this right now is because it's a way to take a shot at Trump and to feel the catharsis of being able to scream at the evil tyrant. And people don't realize that this is a fundamental systemic issue with the federal government and the managing of immigration, because you can repeal the law that makes it illegal for people to enter. You can make it illegal to detain people, but that's not going to solve anything. These things are going to solve anything. I want to make a dent in this to address it somehow, then end the policy of fucking around with other countries' regimes and end the...
Oh. Sorry, Matthew, you're dropping out.
And then put your money where your mouth is.
Sorry.
And
sorry, let me interrupt you, Matthew. End the foreign interventions, and what were your other 2 points? Because your sound really broke up.
The connection kind of sucks, but I think the other one was to end the drug war.
End the drug war.
Yeah, okay.
Foreign interventions, drug war, and take personal responsibility. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, all I wanted to say before we wind up is we don't have time for our piece on Elon Musk, but tune in next time to the Scottish Liberty Podcast and give us your opinion on Elon Musk. Is he the greatest genius and libertarian savior and free market genius of all time, or is he basically just a P.T. Barnum type looter?
Yeah, right. So if you guys know anything about that, please leave something in the comments so we'll read them out next time. Matthew, Mance, thank you so much for joining in the show, and we're sure we'll talk to you again.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Our pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.